I think right after, yeah, I was assigned to a radar school in Texas. Radar was just coming into the military at the time, and we went to a radar school in Texas. And then with that radar training, I was assigned to a night fighter squadron in Key West, Florida, VCN-2. And the job there, that I was mostly in the technical radar department, but the guys in the squadron, they were training for carrier operations and the use of radar at night and stuff, which, like I say, was just coming into the service at the time. That we had radar. When we picked up the new airplanes in San Diego, we did have radar on those things. And if later on, if we look at that little model, I can show you about the Yagi radars. And the screens weren't what's pictured now for radar. It was just a little blip, just one line going up and down. But that was part of it. I was kind of in on the early part of the radar indoctrination in some of the Navy squadrons and stuff.
You're like on the cutting edge of technology.
Yeah, I guess. Well, there have been so many things that have changed technologically in my lifetime. Oh, so now I read about the things about the drones and stuff, and then when I read and hear that the fellows, I'll say a drone operation in Afghanistan is controlled by somebody sitting in Texas. These things are kind of beyond me.
Yeah.
But we finished up there, down there at Key West, and that's where our daughter was born, 1947. We'd been married for almost 4 years then before she was born. And she lives here now near me in Napa. Okay,
what's her name?
Her name's Carolyn, and that was her grandson that came in, or her son that moved the screen here, yeah. Come on, Donald, get them back together here.
Yeah, Texas radar.
We got Texas radar, VCN-2. Okay, VCN-2, the Holloway program. There were those of us who were these, quote, Mustangs, white hats that went through flight training. And as officers, there has always been, I feel, is animosity a good word? Friction, rivalry at least, between academy and non-academy people in the Navy. And there are a lot of, during the war, many non-academy people. I'm part of that group. And so to try to get us up on what should I say, an educational level of most of the academy graduates, they offered what was called the Holloway program, where they would send us, who had never been to college, of course, to college for 2 years. And I was assigned to the University of Minnesota for a tour after that. And that worked out very nicely for me. My parents lived about 70 miles away. I was stationed at what used to be a little Navy detachment at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. And we were up there, and I went to the University of Minnesota for, I think they gave us 5 semesters, I forget. But I went through.
What kind of classes did they want you to take?
I'm sorry?
What sort of classes did they want you to take?
Oh, that you could, basically, they weren't too insistent on what you took, as long as it was leading toward a degree. That I was working on physics and math, but I never did achieve the degree in physics and math, because in physics and math, the courses have to be, you have to take A before you can take B and take C. You just have to do it this way. Or in political science, or something that I could have gotten a degree in, that you can take, I'll say, European history and Asian history and American history all at the same time, because there isn't quite the dependency on one for the other.
Right.
So, but I was working on these other courses and other curriculums, and so I ended up with what they call an ALA, an associate 2-year degree at the University of Minnesota. And before I was again reassigned, and this time they sent me out to San Diego to this ferry squadron that I've mentioned in there. We might go into that a little bit later.
Are we in 44 now?
I'm sorry,
We're in 1944 now?
once more.
We're in 1944 now?
Let's see. No, we're after that. We're quite a bit. 44. Just give me a second here. 40. No, 1950.
Oh, wow.
51. Yeah.
Well, where
See,
were you when the war ended?
Okay, I got my wings in 44. Then after that, I went to Key West for a couple of years.
Oh,
Then I went to
years.
radar school down in Florida. No, the other way around. Went to radar school in Florida and then to Key West for a couple of years. So that took the space from, I'll say 46 or 47 to 50.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And now in Minnesota, I got out of Minnesota in, I think, 1950.
So where were you when the war ended?
When I was in Key West, Florida, excuse me, in that patrol squadron it was in Lake City, Florida. Yeah, I know I was in Lake City because my brother, a little family side note, he's 17 years old, got special permission to get into the Marines. And as I recall, he joined the Marines in February or March of 1945 and was immediately sent out to Okinawa and went through the entire Okinawan campaign. And he didn't get hurt, but of course, many of his buddies got killed. Many.
Wow.
And he wouldn't talk about it for years and years and years. But then finally, he did talk a little bit about it.
Is he gone now?
Yes, yeah, he died a number of years ago.
Wow, 17-year-old kid.
Yeah,
Boy.
it was, well.
Well, how did you hear about the end of the war?
How did what?
How did you hear about it?
I don't know if I was at work or if I was at home and heard on the radio. I don't really recall.
They dropped the bombs?
But,
Yeah.
But that statue that's very common now about that nurse being kissed in Times Square.
Yeah.
They've got down in San Diego. They have one down by the Midway down there. That a statue of that. Of course, it's very.
It's iconic, yeah.
And controversial as to who she was and stuff. All the nurses want to be the girl, I guess.
I know the guys want to be the
But it
sailor,
was,
yeah.
Yeah, but it was a one happy day in this country. As I'm sure, I was here for that day, but I'm sure December 7th, 41 was a memorable but not happy day. Right. That's for darn sure. But the beginning and the end of the war was a terrible thing, and we're still doing it. I don't know if there's any hope or not. Just don't know. I'd like to think there is. When people ask me, I know I'm digressing a bit here, but when they ask it within my lifetime, sum it up or something like that,
right.
My relationships with things, people, and when I think back that as a generation, now that Brokaw coined this term, greatest generation, I don't know about that, but in my generation, we have seen a lot. All generations have, but I think as a whole that mine has probably seen more. And when I think about it and talk with people, that in technology, we have done absolute marvels. From man on the moon and space and all this stuff, just hardly. Medicine. When I think, I know I wouldn't be alive today without the advances that have occurred since I was a young man, let's say it that way. But the area where I think we stink is human relations. I'm not sure that the world is any better than it was. Maybe it's worse than our relationship with mankind. I'm not talking about any people, any nation or anything, but with mankind.
Getting along with each
We've
other.
just blew it. And then maybe to salve my own thinking, I think, well, maybe part of it's always been this way, but now we have the communications to be aware of so many more things that we were not aware of then.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is, but I am disappointed in mankind's effort to get along with his fellow man. each day we see, I don't know.
Just goes
It just,
on,
no,
yeah.
yeah.
But at least we're not speaking Japanese now.
No, in fact, something that was very moving and gratifying to me is at the Pearl Harbor at Kilo Pier on December 7th, when that big celebration day was, one of the Japanese got up and gave a speech too. And it was, I think he spoke it in Japanese, but they had a translator, was translating it right there. And that he said that with regard to seeking world peace, which I feel that every thinking human does seek this. And he said, things don't look good in the world today. But he said, it can happen because look at us. He said, 75 years ago,
Bitter enemies.
we came over and deliberately bombed. I won't say deliberately killed the people because that was not their object. Their object was to keep our carriers out of the other part of the Pacific.
Right.
But he said, and look at us today.
Best friends,
And that's gratifying to see. But I don't, and the other side of the coin is so black that, but there are good things too.
They're real, yeah.
Yeah,
rays
there
of
are
hope.
good. And really we had quite a lengthy period with China, and we're not really on real good buddy, but we're getting by.
Well,
And
yeah,
even
right,
with Russia,
close, yeah.
that we're getting, we haven't bombed anybody, and whether I don't know.
North Korea,
I
who
just,
knows?
that's the big one that I'm sweating right now. That's the big one that I'm worried about right now. And it's basically, as I see it, is that our lines of communication are basically blocked with Japanese. Well, again, when I think that I had a dinner with the Japanese General Counsel and his wife within the past few months, and who 75 years ago it would have been a hell of a lot different situation. What in that, was it South Pacific? You got to be taught to hate or something like that. About children, you have to be taught. I don't know.
Well, anyway, let's get you back on track. So
Okay.
it's 1950 now?
Okay, we're 1950. I joined
So
that ferry
you
squadron
stayed,
down
You stayed
here.
in the military, obviously.
Yeah, okay. Finally, well, of course, I've been commissioned now for a few years, and incidentally, that was a shock too, with regard to the commissioning, that the first time when I had on my ensign's uniform and stuff, and I was walking, and somebody saluted, and I looked around to see who they were saluting, and it was me. I was always on the other end of that program. So, but in that ferry squadron, I did have an opportunity. I was able to fly many, many different airplanes. I think I've flown 34, 36 different Navy models of planes, and it gave me a experience. I'm just trying to think if we had any jets at that time. Well, it's immaterial.
Pretty new.
I got checked out in jets later. But
So what was your favorite airplane?
I'm sorry?
What was your favorite one?
It depends on what you're really, what you want to know about the airplane. For the sheer joy of flying, I would say the N2S, that first trainer, or the Army, one of the Army, that little grasshopper, the smaller, the lighter plane, and then going back one step further than that even is sailplanes. I flew sailplanes for a little bit, and that is as far as flying, as far as being in the air, I'll say, is the ultimate as far as flying. Parachuting is quite nice, where you're coming down, that quiet, that stuff you just can't imagine.